Hi there, Robin here from Expert On, and today we're going to be talking about soldering LED lights. So you're watching our new channel, which is Island LED, and it's all about LED lights, LED strips, how to work with them, and all the other things like video walls, video panels, everything to do with LED and making it work for you. It doesn't matter if you're just wrapping a room, working some under counters, or taking on a big project. These are all the basics that we're going to do first, and then we're going to get into, well, doing some projects and seeing how it all works. Today, it's going to be about just what we've got here, which is soldering LED lights. We're going to solder some basic single color LEDs. We're going to solder multicolor LEDs. I'm also going to talk you through the why I do things a certain way. That's my way of doing it. It's not the only way of doing it. This is more like a ongoing recipe and things I look for when I'm actually doing the job. So that's what today's video is going to be all about. If you want, you can always subscribe, so this way you get to find out about all the other videos. You can also hit the like button if this worked out for you, and well, hit the bell if you really want to find out when the next video is. So before I actually do the actual work, I like to do some warm-ups. So I take some scrap, I do some warm-ups. What I'm really trying to do is, get my steadiness, get everything set up, so this way I'm happy the way I get my actual table set up and what's going on. Soldering is not rocket science. It's not magic. All you're really doing is trying to get some of this solder onto the contacts and then onto the wire. Important thing is how much and how long to cut the wires, and how important it is to have that just nice and straight when you start off with. Same thing, we don't want to just try and solder some balls down on top of that or use the actual soldering pen to melt the solder and make it drip. We want the solder to wick or be taken onto the actual strip itself. So let's start, see where we get, and I'll show you as we go along. So again, I did a couple of warm-ups, and now we're going to do a couple more. You start with your wire. We're going to need to strip it. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you split your wire. So take your wire, fan it out just a little bit, not very much. You might want to fan it out a little bit later afterwards, but we start with that. A tool, and we'll link all the tools that I use here, which make my job really easy. You could strip this one by one and then try and level it out afterwards with a pair of scissors, but you really need to get the plastic straight first when you strip it. So this is a pull stripper. So yes, I said pull stripper. What it's going to do is grab all the wire at the same time. The crimper basically locks on to all the wires and then pulls back on it while holding the cables still at the back. So I'll set it up, then I'll actually pull on it, just like that. All right, so there's a perfect example of what exactly is going to take place. When I've used this guy, it gives me a nice, straight, perfect line. Really, really good. Now, these are too long, okay, so I am going to want to trim that back a bit. Scissors, whatever you got. I'm going to say an appropriate length is about a little more than a 1/4 inch, maybe 5 millimeters, that sort of thing. I do want to twist them up because this is RGB wire and it's just made up of all strands, so we are going to separate it a little bit more. And then I'm going to try and twist this wire up a bit. Just give it a couple of twists, just to keep all the strands together. Normally they're not apart, but for some reason when I touch it with the solder, I tend to move things around a bit, so try and get in there and not make too much of a mess with the other ones. There we go. So done. All the strands are together. I'm going to just put this all back nice and straight again. All these little things you need to take time with. So there we go. So everything's good and ready. So I'm going to put that down here on this side, and always have things ready. Just hold your stuff down straight. So now let's find the end of the roll that we're working with. There we go. So we're going to use this end here. Now if you're cutting wire off, so I did this, I can leave them long or I can cut them in half if I need to solder off on that end there. This was a half cut, and this other one was 3/4 cut, so I had a little bit more space. So I've left this one at 3/4, so this way I can give you a good idea, a good show of what it looks like. Now we need to connect these wires to here, And it's not as bad as it looks. First of all, we got to check and see on the lights there's a positive, and then there's a green, red, blue. So because the red here is being occupied by the actual color red, they have a black wire. Sometimes that wire can be white. Sometimes that wire can be black or white. And it also comes with black and white in case it's RGBW. We'll cover that one after this one. So here we go. Now, one thing I do notice off is that my roll of wire, the actual two colors, the green and the blue, are not in the right place to line up perfectly. I don't really care because I'm going to pay attention to where this is going. If I'm hooking up another set of lights to here, those wires will just line up. It's more, color is more of a reference, not a rule. So it's a guide for me to go against. So as long as I put the same wires on both ends, it doesn't matter what color the wires are. So these could all have been black, and as long as I line them up in the right place, we're good. Where it does matter is when we're going to be putting it onto a controller. Now, you need to know what's going on behind here to make sure that it's right. The LEDs are normally 99% of the time right. They're right, they're lined up properly. That arrow lines up with the positive on a controller box, and then all the actual colors line up beside it. That's the most important thing. So I'm going to go with, for some particular reason, this roll of wire is always a pain in the butt, and it's always off. A lot of wire have it in the right sequence. This particular one doesn't, and I don't know why. So either you can go at it and fuss and really just try and get those colors right, but to be ultimately correct, if I am going to end up with either this type of connector at the end of it, it probably was pre-manufactured for me, and then the colors would all line up anyways. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, and we need to get solder on both these points. So to do that, you're going to need a soldering pen or a soldering iron. I have an iron, which basically means it's plugged in all the time. A gun is no good. A gun is the one with the little lip on it with a really big tip on the end of it, which is unworkable. It's good for big projects, but not this kind of stuff. Also, you want to have something that's wet. So in this case here, I have a Kleenex all folded up. It's wet. It allows me to clean off the tip. Remember, this is hot, but I don't know why I have to say that, but I do have to say that for safety purposes. We also need something to hold down the wire with, which is what I've got here, and I'm going to need something to hold down the strips. I use my roll of solder. Yours might be smaller, so you may use something else. And then we are going to need to get solder here on the 4 pins. So I'm just going to move this out of the way for a second so I can work on this. And I'm not trying to get solder on here and then on here. I want this to take the solder itself. So one, have enough solder in your hand. Two, because I just wiped this down, I do want to apply a little solder here. It's to help the heat to transfer, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to heat up the actual copper here. Now I don't want to do it for very long, so I need enough solder on here for it to be happy. And this is just a heat transfer, and then I'm going to feed the solder to the actual strip itself. Just like that. Take that, just feed it this way. The copper wants to take the solder, not trying to force it on there and make a blob. I'm trying to let the copper on the strip of light take the solder. So that means it melted on the actual copper strip. So now we have all 4 of them have solder on it. Now we got to do the same thing for the wire. So here, because I'm trying to put solder on it, I do find another. I'm going to get my scissors back. I'm doing this so I can have this come up. I just want to lift it up in the air a bit so I can work with it a little bit more. Spread it out. And again, I want the wire to take the solder, so make sure there's enough solder on here so this way I can transfer the heat. I'm going to put this underneath, and I'm going to touch both at the same time. Boom, just like that. Just get some solder on there. I'm going to do it again on each color. Just getting a little bit on there, so this way everything is soaked in and ready to go. So why did I do that? Why am I applying it to both? So this way I just have to heat up the contacts. I only have so many hands. In this case, I only have 2. So once I do this, I'll be able to just apply the wire onto the strip. So how do I do that? We're going to take away the scissors. We're not going to need those anymore. I want to make sure this is flexing down and it's pointing in the right direction. So I'm curving it. I'm just helping it. I want it to be pushing down. on the actual wire. So now I'm going to line the two up, get some my other stuff, my other debris out of the way. I'm going to line up my wire with my LED strip. So I just started at the beginning. I just went to the first one, and now I got to do this left-handed, so this may take a little bit of practice sometimes for folks. Find something to push down on. I could use my fingers. I've done it before. The reason I'm doing it this way is this is a little bit safer. So I'm pushing the actual wire down in, so this way as soon as I make contact, heat contact, it's going to connect, in which the first one has already done so. I'm going to make sure that I'm lined up and I'm straight as I can, so there's no rush here. Now I'm going to do the second one. Always take about a 5-second break between each one, so this way it actually comes apart. You may have to clean off your tip if you've got too much solder, because in this case I just really want to heat up the surface so the two melt together. I'm going to get my red out from underneath, get that back on top. I'm going to have to reset here just to get myself all in the right place. And I want my wires on top, not on the bottom. So there we go. The next one and the next one's set. Straighten everything out a bit. And as you do this more and more, you realize you can actually make your wires shorter and shorter. It'll be easier and easier for you to work with because you'll be more comfortable with it. So again, I'm just pushing down on that, making sure that's right on top. And a quick little dab there. And again, I want to make sure that my wires aren't touching. So I'm just pushing that in. I want to make sure I have at least the width of my screwdriver between the two to make this happen. So there we go. Okay, so there's no contact there. And the last one, we're going to heat up and do the same thing. So there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 are now done. I probably could have been a little lighter on the solder if I really wanted to, and I probably could have been a little shorter on the actual wire itself. But the important thing is, because I applied the solder to the actual lighting first, that made a big difference because I put it on the actual copper terminals on the light here. I applied solder here. By applying solder to here and allowing the actual copper to draw the solder in, I've got a super incredible bond to this now. This is really, really stuck on here. It's stronger than the actual rest of the system. So that's a big bonus to having this done this way. And the more you do, the faster you'll get at it. And again, practice. If this was my first time, I'd probably do it 3-4 times just to get the hang of it. So this way, when I'm actually going to do it for the work I need to get done, do it. If you're doing this for a light project, you do want to pre-measure, sample everything out, so this way you have it all laid out. Then you want to go back to a table where you can work on it, because trying to solder upside down or doing something crazy like that's not worth it. So that is how we do this. That was very nice, very easy. I'm not upset with that at all. This is just as straightforward. This is just a 2-wire quick connection here. We've got 2 wires, so we just need to make contact with it, positive, negative, red, black. That's pretty straightforward. So if we cut this one will cut right in the middle here, just like that. So now we have what I've been practicing with. We'll cut that free because I don't need that anymore. Whoops. We will use the wire, so I'm going to use this quick connect here to actually cut a fresh start point, just like that. I'm going to split the wire a little bit. We're going to have another video after this, which is going to be more about the power supplies, how to measure how much power to use, how to use a tester or a meter to check the draw. So right now I'm just twisting the actual wire here at the 2 ends, just so this way I don't have any loose stray wire. I'm going to get that ready for solder, and I'm going to get my lights here, and I'm going to bring that down here, and I'm going to get that ready for solder. So I'm going to again put my roll of solder on it, because it is a pound of solder, so it kind of holds everything down, no problem. And yeah, let's get that nice and flat, and we're going to grab the pen, and again we're going to go for the exact same thing. I'm trying to heat up the copper here, so it takes the actual solder, and we're going to get some solder on there. Now again, I did have to now apply some solder on my pen, and the reason again is not, I don't want to transfer that solder onto here. I want that to transfer the heat to make it easier. So now, boom, one drop on that side. I'm going to repeat the same task on this side here, one drop on this side. There we go. So now we have solder on both of those copper terminals. Now I can bring my wire into play. Get something to hold that down, just like that. Get something to prop it up with, so the wires are now facing up. There we go. Again, now I can apply some solder to the actual wire. Lean up against the wire, get some solder on there. Rinse and repeat, just like that. So now, these two have solder, no problem. Now I'll be able to take this away, bring this up, make sure it's orientated in the right direction, so positive is on my side, so I'm going to make sure the red is on my side. Line that up, bring something heavy up against it again, just like that. I don't need the solder anymore because everything's been pre-soldered. I will need to change hands here. So I've changed hands, I put the pin in my other hand, and I've got my little screwdriver here to show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to just line up, press down on that red contact, bring the pen in just enough so it melts everything. Just like that. It's all melted, good. If I don't get it in the 3 to 5 seconds, I'll probably reset myself because I don't want to overheat this strip of light. So again, now I'm holding on top, holding the wire down in place, trying to find myself a comfortable spot to get the pen in. Now eventually you'll do this without thinking about it. You'll just make that happen. So there you go. So now we're back up down and we're on. 3 seconds later, boom, we're all set. So there we go. Another job. And the more I do, the better I'll get at it. It's because I don't do this every day. This is not my everyday job. I don't solder. I'm like everybody else. I solder when I need to solder, which has to do with a lot of projects that we do or samples I make for my customers when they need a big project done. So if they're doing a large thing and it's like, how are we going to get it done? I may have to actually do the work myself so this way I can walk them through it. So that's when I solder. Now the next one is soldering one more time. We're going to try and connect 2 sections of light, just like I did here. This is actually 2 separate sections, which I put solder on and connected it. Now there is tricks to that. Usually I say just go get another set of lights. Are pretty darn cheap. So what we'll do is we'll cut this off altogether so we don't need it here, and we're going to reconnect it. So, oh my gosh, I have 2 separate sections of lights. I need to reconnect them. You would do that by actually overlapping the lights. To do that, you have to go on the back side. You have to get rid of some of the actual double-sided sticky tape. And we're also going to have to get rid of the actual, so we're taking the backer off. Now we got to scrape back and get rid of the actual double side off the back of the strip. So this way we get back to the terminals, which is what we're down to here. We've now exposed the terminals on the back side. This is also important if you're doing a project where you're putting in aluminum tracks and you're working at the very end of the roll. You need to make sure and cover that end of the roll and protect it, because this will actually short the lights out if it touches the aluminum track. So now this light, if you haven't followed yet, is going to end up on top of this contact. So I'm getting this contact, which is exposed on the back side. I need to solder this down to this side here. There's a bunch of different ways of doing it. You can punch a hole in it. You can do all kinds of stuff. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is get solder on this side here. So I need to transfer the heat on this side. Then, once I get my 2 points of solder here, I'll get this on top. And then I will push down on the solder and try and get it to melt through this copper and heat up all the solder underneath and lock those 2 pieces together. So that's going to be the goal. So grab a soldering pin. We'll start with this side. Put our 1 pound of solder back down there. And we're going to get it to wick some solder onto the actual contact just by doing that. And again, my rule is like 5 seconds. I really want to get this done in a relatively short period of time, not to damage the lights. If I heat the copper up too much, what's going to happen is we're actually going to maybe damage this guy, or have this guy, you know, get so hot that the solder releases from it. So now I need to get my other section of light. So now I'm going to transfer. I'm going to come across here. Remember, I've taken back the plastic on the back side. I've taken back double-sided tape on the back side, so there's nothing there except the light. I'm going to put that down on top, and hopefully I can make this happen. So again, heating it up, going straight through. I have to apply a little pressure to it, and hopefully that goes down. Put my finger there, and I'm going to try and repeat the same thing. Remember, I need that solder, I need that copper to heat up and let that solder melt, because if I actually just try and melt the solder, there's no guarantee I'm going to get a good solid adhesion to it. So I'm going back and forth a little bit here to make sure I did a good job, and give it a couple of seconds to make sure it's cooling down a bit. And if I did it, it'll work. If I didn't get it, it won't work. So let's find out. Let's take the power supply. Let's go to this end. Boom. There we go. Everything's been reconnected. I've actually done 2 repairs now on this. I did my trying it out, sampling it here, and then I redid it there. Everything's solid. I can snap on that, no worries. All the way down. This is now a solid piece of light. Boom. And by the way, depending on how this is cut at the factory, that is how they actually process to connect the actual 1 meter sections, turn them into 5 meter sections. That's why you see solder every couple of spots. And there you go. That's that. You can get quick connects like this, and you can use quick connects like this. I'm not a super fan of it. I actually kind of dislike the product because it eventually, this has only one tiny little pinhole that makes contact to the copper on the lights. And the problem is over time, that little contact will burn a hole through it, just as if it was a soldering pen. So if I want to use that, yes, I could. If I was lucky enough to have a soldering pen, I would actually then try and transfer a little drop of solder onto all of them. So if you did want to use a quick connect, you basically cut your lights in half right where the points are going to be. These things are sometimes fussy. Sometimes you have to flick them because when they manufactured it, those little points got into the plastic and got stuck. You also have to check the orientation of it. So in this case, my positive is way at top towards you, and the blue is way at the bottom, so I'm going to orientate the lights the same way. I'm going to slide this in. There's a tiny little track there that catches it. I'm going to try and work the lights back and forth. In this case, this one worked out really well. I need to get those contacts under that actual point there. And if I did want to solder, I could leave it like that, test the lights, see if they work. If they don't, it hasn't scored or scratched into the copper enough through the lacquer, so I would shake it back and forth, moving the lights a little bit, just to make sure it's worked in properly. If I did want to solder it down, then I would have to weight it back down again. I'm not trying to gob solder onto here at all. Actually, this was a trick that one of my customers who does big set projects said he likes using because it's a very clean finish. And what he'll do is he'll actually just make contact with it and then just lay some solder in there, just like that, just because it kind of guarantees the project works out really well. So I'm just getting some solder under that pin. I'm just heating the top of the pin up enough so I can drop some solder underneath it. And again, there you go. Just enough to do it. Now I don't want to overdo it because I still want this door to close. So I did put a little too much on the first one, so I do have to level it off a bit here. I'm going to make contact with it and level it off a bit, just like that. Just drop it down a little bit. And there you go. So now that connector, with some force, can be put back down into place. There you go. So I did have, because I am breaking the rules. By doing that, I did break the rules. I did push that and solder that on, so I did actually have to squeeze the clip to get it to go on. But again, this is now locked into place. This is a better way. If you are going to use clips, the better way. You don't have to do this. It's your choice. Try it out. It's a long-term fix, putting the solder on. So again, all you do is take the track, slide this in underneath. Some people go, oh, that's super simple. And it is super simple. I mean, because that's all you really have to do. And then off you go. You push that down, get this to stay in place. And if you did a good job, simply plugging power into it, turning it on, is going to be what's going to tell you what's going on. So you need to plug that in, get everything orientated in the right direction, which I think is this way. Turn it on, hopefully it works. There we go. So we got all our lights are connected all the way through. Boom. This is not part of that project. We've gotten everything we did connected. So it's all there, it's all working, everything is just fine. So there we go. That's what a quick connect looks like, solder connections, and that's what it's about. If you'd like to learn more about this, or any other how-to parts of working with LED lights, leave them down in the comments, and what I'm going to be doing is using that as reference to help build the video library that you're going to see on this channel. So yeah, if you want to see any other types of videos having to do with lights, any type of lights that you want me to talk about, we've got tons and tons of them. We're going to keep going through them every few videos every week and try and get this channel filled up with content. So again, if you liked it, let me know. Subscribe so this way you know when we've got new videos. And if you want to know even quicker, hit that bell button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.